Today, as a 40-something man, one thing that I don't really care about and refuse to spend a lot of money on is clothing. You'll never see me in anything overpriced or heavily branded, and it makes no sense to me to spend hundreds of dollars on a pair of Nike sneakers when a $30 pair of lugs will do the same job. On any given day, I'm probably wearing no more than $100 worth of clothing from head to toe, and I like it that way. I don't feel the need to impress anyone, and so I choose comfort over fashion, always. In my younger days, I also rarely wore the popular brands, but not because I didn't want to. I didn't wear them because I couldn't. They didn't make them in my size. That was part of my life as an obese kid. And it's something that people of average size take for granted. When you're heavy and when you're young, it can be a challenge to find clothes that fit. Or at least it was for me growing up in the 80s. As I mentioned in episode 1, I used to sweat profusely as an overweight kid, and so I liked to wear dark colors to try to hide it. I also preferred oversized baggy clothes to try to hide my physique. But even basic clothing items that were popular in school like blue jeans were impossible for me to find. I couldn't get the right length because even the waist on a boy's extra large wouldn't fit. And I couldn't get the right waist size because it meant buying men's clothes, and so the length would be 2 feet too long. That meant that I only had one place to turn: good old sweatpants. And so throughout my grade school days, t-shirts and sweatpants were my choice of attire, out of necessity. If it had an elastic waist and was made of cotton fleece, it was meant for young me. I hated wearing formal attire because, again, it just wouldn't fit right. Dress shirts, blazers, suits, anything that was fitted and didn't stretch, I'd have to buy men's sizes to accommodate my width but end up with too much length. I remember one time I was in a store with my mother trying on suit jackets. She was trying to do up the buttons on a jacket that was simply too tight. A couple of teenagers happened to walk by, saw me squeezed into that thing like a sausage casing, and burst out laughing before walking away. When I was 12, we all went to Europe to visit my dad's family. All of the cousins spoke perfect English and took us on a day of shopping. One other thing the cousins had in common was that they were all in good shape. I remember being in a store and trying to find a belt for a pair of dress pants that my mother wanted to buy me for my grandparents' anniversary celebration. The largest belt that they had in that store just didn't fit me. One of my cousins, who was several years older than me, then tried on that same belt, and it was large enough to wrap around his waist twice. He looked at that belt folded around his waist, then glanced at me before quietly walking away. We all do things in life that we look back on later and ask ourselves, what was I thinking? For me, one of those moments happened when I was 11 or 12. I was a big fan of Michael Jackson, as was almost everyone in the 80s, and one day at a store, I came across one of the leather jackets with the zippers on it that he was famous for. It was a men's size jacket, which meant that it barely fit me widthwise, but was too long for me lengthwise. That didn't deter me, so I bought that jacket. A few days later, a friend invited me to watch a minor league hockey game at our local arena. I knew it would be a little chilly in that building, and I would need to wear a jacket. But the only jacket that I had was, you guessed it, that Michael Jackson one. So I wore it. You can imagine the reaction in a small town to a fat kid wearing a long and tight leather jacket covered in zippers at a hockey game. My friend turned to me and said, "Everybody's looking at you, you know." I answered with, "Yeah, I know." Now, I don't know whatever happened to that jacket, but I'm pretty sure I never wore it again. One day in my mid-teen years, I was at the mall and was looking to buy a suit for whatever reason. I went into a store and the sales lady was very kind and tried to help me. She took my measurements, then went into their back room to look at their stock. She returned with a somber look on her face to inform me that they didn't have anything to accommodate me, so I sulked away empty-handed. By the time I got to high school, I started to grow and lean out just enough that I could finally fit into a pair of blue jeans. One day, some girls from another high school who I knew from grade school came to visit. One of them looked me up and down, and I smiled thinking she was going to remark that I was starting to lose weight. But instead she said, "Oh my God, you're wearing jeans!" Since after knowing me as the sweatpants superstar through elementary school, that was apparently a big shock to her. When I was 16, I got my first job at a Tim Hortons donut shop. I loved the idea of making my own money, but I hated the required uniform. Completely non-stretchy dress pants with a short-sleeved dress shirt. And to make matters worse, you were required to tuck the shirt in, which completely conflicted with my ideals when it came to what was acceptable fashion for me. Some days I would stroll in with the shirt untucked and try to be inconspicuous, but I'd always get caught eventually. Then one day, my sweet and loving mom came to the rescue, completely by accident. She had noticed that sometimes I'd return home from work with my clothes covered in flour and icing sugar and other things common at a donut shop. So she made me an apron in colors that matched the uniform. Her intention was to simply prevent the clothes from getting too dirty. But my intention was to use that apron to cover my physique. So I showed up at work wearing that apron, curious as to whether management would be cool with it or not. Luckily for me, yes they were. And so for the rest of my donut selling career, that apron was my crutch. It was my shield. And yes, it kept my clothes clean too. Thanks, Mom. Today, things are completely different, not just in terms of the clothes I can wear, but also in terms of the sizes available to overweight people. We live in a digital world in which obesity has unfortunately become an epidemic. I can comfortably wear average size clothing now, but even if I couldn't, many major retailers offer clothing in larger sizes for children and adults alike. In addition to that, some brilliant person created a type of pants that I wish existed when I was a kid: cargo joggers. Khaki material but with a drawstring waist. Brilliant! You'll find my closet overrun with those today. Not because that's all I can fit into, but because I live for comfort. There's also this product called Spanx underwear. I don't know, that's a little too complicated. They've even addressed the sweating issue with the creation of dry fit shirts. Again, you'll find my closet overrun with those. I guess the reality is, a lot of the difficulties that I had with clothing as an overweight kid have been resolved today thanks to modern technology and the evolution of fashion. It's even perfectly acceptable to wear shirts at the beach now due to increased awareness on the harmful effects of UV rays. I guess the kids of today really do have it made. Then again, they've got cyberbullying and online trolls and the influence of dime a dozen Instagram models and the normalcy of photo filtering. So maybe we're even.